Hello YouTube, this is part 2 of my in-tank EFI electric fuel pump on my 73 Mustang here. On the first video I showed how I found out that the 87 to 94 Fox body Mustang fuel sending unit will fit right into the stock opening that's on the top of these tanks. You just pull that little vent cap out and put the pump right down inside of it with no modifications to the tank. Those only 2 little modifications you got to do to the pump itself. They were minor. You don't need any special tools other than just a drill and a pair of tin snips. They don't have the float level on them, so you still have to keep your factory float level. But it's already wired and everything, so just plugged it in. I just capped it off to keep the fuel from running out. Now this tank went right back up inside the car with no issues. It clears the hump in the floor with no problems. Now in the first video, you can see where I put caulking on the tank to act as a somewhat of an insulator, so any vibrations, hopefully it won't transfer into the metal of the car. I don't know if that shimmied down enough to not be a problem, but I did some measurements and I'm going to show you those measurements. So I think with or without the caulking, I think it still would have fit perfectly fine. I'm also going to show you where all the hoses come out. Those are also coming out all the stock location on the car. So I didn't have to do any kind of special routing or anything on those. Alright, as you can see, this is where the lines originally came out. And as you see, I have the extra lines in here. Nothing's in a bind. Everything moves freely. Nothing's pinched. I am still using the original steel line that came from the front of the car from the charcoal canister from my fuel return. And I ran new 5/16 steel line for the pressure side. My power, I just grounded it, and then the positive I ran up inside the trunk so I can keep the connector nice and dry. Other than that, like I said, I didn't have to do anything special up underneath here. For my hoses, I didn't have to cut nothing out or anything. Everything still fit. You see the tank is sitting right in its factory spot with no issues. So I'm going to go ahead and show you those measurements. Alright, here's my measurements. Okay. What I did is I measured from I took a straight edge and ran it straight across. Now the sending unit does sit down inside just about 1/8 of an inch, but I ran a straight edge across, and then from the top of the tank to here, I had about 1.25 inches, almost 5/16. It's kind of right in between, and I did bend these down just a little bit, not a lot, but just a little bit. And then I went underneath the car, did the same thing. Took a straight edge, I measured from essentially the bottom straight across, and then measured up with the tape measure. Now it had about 1.7 inches. And that's right about where that sending unit's actually sitting. So as you see, it's not a large amount of gap, but it's more than enough to keep it from the top of these from rubbing on the bottom of the floor and wearing holes in them. So it's more than adequate, more than enough to do it. I have my hose clamps on there, I have my connector on there, and everything's clear and perfectly fine. So like I said, all in all, using that particular fuel pump, what ended up pretty much being a good success. I'm going to go ahead and start the car up. Now you will hear my cooling fans, but see, it started right up. Unless you're all the way down there really listening for it, the pump's pretty quiet. You don't really hear it. Like I said, I'm running the old 351 Windsor 5.8. Thanks for watching.